We're live.
Welcome to the download, episode 3. How's everybody doing?
It has been a wacky week. I just have to say that it's just been a wacky week. I'm checking in by saying I feel a little centered in the whack.
So, perfect place to start. Let's do our check-ins. Welcome to the download. This is our monthly check-in from MBT's creative team, where we download and we discourse and discuss all of the things that are happening present pulse within the culture, within our community, within our organization. Every month, this is our favorite kind of free-form conversation that's informed by your comments on Instagram, our posts, and really just like what the universe is communicating to us as Black artists in the urgency of this moment. So we will start with a check-in. How's everyone doing? I'll check in first because I've got the mic and I'm going to pass it. But Sade Lithcott, CEO, National Black Theater, accessibility check-in. I'm sitting on my couch in front of a beaded Yoruba painting. And I'm wearing a flowy white dress with a nameplate necklace, and my dress has some embroidery. When we check in, we share how we're getting our vibe right. And so I'm getting my vibe right tonight for this download conversation by sporting a red lip. That is, yes. I wanted to get my vibe going. Something about tonight's download, I was like, hoops and a red lip and a cat eye, and my vibe is right. I'm going to pass the mic to Nia. You want to check in?
Yeah. Hey, y'all. I'm Nia. I am a Black woman with like a hair in a bun if I lean in the right direction. And I'm wearing black overalls today. That's part of getting my vibe right. In addition, I was listening to a lot of Kendrick Lamar and like looking in the mirror and giving myself like a pep talk. Like, we are going to be all right. So with that, I pass it to Jonathan McCrory.
Hey everyone, my name is Jonathan. Really happy to be here. I am an African-American male performative body person, human. My spirit is a she, I'm a he, him. How do I look? I'm wearing a scarf that has a nice like embroidered print to it. I'm wearing a shirt that is designed by the National Black Theater that says "The power is in me," something that I am definitely going to need to get through the rest of this day, acknowledging the power. How am I getting my vibe right? I'm drinking green juice. So, you just gotta have some green juice inside of you, next to you, to get some of those like good energies flowing inside. So green juice is what I'm doing right now. And without further ado, I pass it to Maitre D, Chelsea D.
Hi, I'm Chelsea D. She, her, hers. I'm seated in front of some books. I have on a dark blue shirt and a beaded necklace. I also have some hair clips in my hair that say "Unfeathered Black Girl." I'm on the unceded lands of the Nacotchtank and Piscataway peoples in Washington, D.C. And I'm getting my vibe right with a cup of tea. And I'm also pulling energy from this, like the colors of this necklace, because they're so bright and vibrant. And I'm like, I want to move towards that. It's bright and juicy. So that's where I am. Who do I pass it off to again?
I'll take it.
Okay, back to each other.
Nia, can we throw up the title of today's download? We are talking about today the Ancestral Platinum Plan, creating a pathway for tomorrow. This month's topic is really informed. I wanted to have a conversation about a way forward. I know that these have been, like Jonathan said, this week has been so wacky. There has been a huge sense of labor to get us to a destination in terms of the election. Then there was like the pause. And then there was, for many folks, jubilation, for a lot of folks, anxiety. And, there's still so much uncertainty. And so how are we blazing a path forward? I know for me, fatigue is real. And So I want to have a conversation about that. And when I say fatigue is real, you know, in the midst of this transitional period of time where record numbers of folks came out and voted, and, you know, Black folks are a minority in this country, but our majority vote got a new president elected. Like, what does that say about like power, about our vote, about how we show up for each other, and how we carry this country forward when the country doesn't even recognize us at all of our humanity, right? That I'm playing around with in my head, and then the fatigue of, we have so much more work to do. Like, when do we get to rest? And folks are jumping to the strategy for what's next, and I'm like, you can't jump to the strategy of what's next without digesting what happened on our backs, right? So like all of that, and that, like, I love this quote, like, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Like, what is the cultural platinum plan for us and for the tomorrow that we'll build? So,
and can I just also uplift with the fatigue of, like, I've just been sitting with, like, the holidays are coming up and COVID numbers are rising, right? And so, like, the fatigue of, there was a glimpse of a moment, to be honest, where it felt like this was going to turn, right? Like the COVID wasn't going to have its way. And then all of a sudden now I'm starting to reinstate some parameters, some care parameters that I did when we were in shutdown, like fully cleaning, fully, like before I walk into my full house and my house feels like a safe zone, like washing my hands, washing the doorknob, like going back to that kind of psychic paranoia that kind of came up during the pandemic was at its height in New York City. So like there's also this equal fatigue of being back in relationship with that human, because I felt like that human was I no longer had to deal with that human. So like there's on top of everything you're talking about, Sade, like there's this other fatigue of being like, well, what does the holidays look like in this new arena? How do I muster the strength to return back to taking care of my day-to-day things with that same psychological like muscle that I had to groom myself to do when we were in the thick of this? Do I really want to go back to March, Jonathan, that was like cleaning and tilling and stuff like that? Or how do I find the healing pattern between the two? So I just wanted to uplift inside of fatigue, just like that notion, as well as we think about what this election has done, when we think about like the celebration in the streets, but then we also think about this very real thing that's been on the undercurrent, which is the numbers are rising. We're close to 2%, might get to 3%. And then what does that mean?
We're over 2% in New York City. It's 2.6. Yeah. Yeah. Lockdown, right? Jubilation to lockdown.
And that's what's been so present for me, is like holding two extremes all the time, like total jubilation and also anxiety, and this, to your point, Jonathan, this hypervigilance, that where I'm like, am I paranoid? Am I being intelligently vigilant? Am I being, how am I prepared, and how do I feel good and safe in that preparedness? Without becoming doomsday prepper level, totally out of control. You know what I mean? It's hard sometimes to find that compass within it. It makes me think about something I heard Trisha Hersey, who's the Nap Bishop of the Nap Ministry. She talked about rest and the Nap Ministry, and rest as resistance is an embodied practice. It's something that you have to do, and it's not, like you get in a lot of education schools right now, the idea of anti-racism. It's not a theory. Anti-racism is an intellectual concept that we put in our heads and we roll around, and then we have some more words or ideas or write books about it. But rest is something that you only know if you do. Rest is something that you only get the benefits of it if you practice it. And so I've been finding that it's been very difficult to make myself rest, because I want to go and prepare and stay vigilant and stay active and track the trends. And, you can't stay ready so you don't have to get ready. You know, that's kind of where I want to live. And yet the fatigue of that. And then the holidays. I've been thinking about it, you know, HOLIDAZE, because it's like it's not it doesn't, I can't be with my people. I can't touch them, can't hug them. Or at least I don't feel safe enough to do so. And so it is very difficult because I'm a holiday gal. I'm all about the decor. I'm all about the potpourri, the scents, the dishes, the tradition. I'm so about it. And I don't know if I'm gonna get any of that this year. So I'm like, how do I sit with that and just let that be what that is, you know?
Yeah, I mean, Mia, I don't know if you want to get in on that.
I'm teetering the line between just like having thoughtful things to say about fatigue and me also just being like, y'all, I'm so tired.
Yeah.
I've been bracing myself for the past months, waiting for like, okay, is this it? Is this like the impact that I've been preparing for? And then I can let it go. But it's like, I've been holding on. And so even in the moments of jubilation, it's like, the hands are only raised so high.
Yeah, it's a reckoning. You know, everyone talks about this time as a reckoning of racial justice, or it's a reckoning around environmental justice. But I think not enough time and energy is spent talking about how it's a reckoning to the kind of systemic trauma. Like, this is traumatizing what we're living through in each day that feels like a week. I mean, we joke about it, right? Like this is the longest month ever. And it's like, and when you're talking about it as the day, you know, like you're like, this Monday is the longest month I've ever lived through. You're like, that was 24 hours. There is a real visceral sense of the shift hitting the fan. And where can you, like, you know, as human beings, we lean into where we're rooted, but everything feels like a storm, right? And that's traumatizing. And I think that there's something about this period of time that trauma awakens latent trauma, right? Like trauma. And when that vibration of trauma recognizes itself in something past life, it pulls that, right? And I think that's the thing that's so incredible about MBT. So much of the work we do that y'all don't get to see is energetic. And so the weight of the energy of these traumatic things that we're experiencing, coupled with the reckoning of our ancestral story, it's a lot. And nobody gives you permission, because that's the other thing, right? Rest is important, not just for how restorative it is, but we need to model rest so that we give other people permission to rest. Because collective, I think, the collectivity of recognizing the importance of restoration in this reckoning moment is key. Because that's the thing about COVID too. I'm as healthy as my neighbor. Like, if my neighbor is not well, then it's very hard for me to be well from a psychic standpoint too. Like, oh my God, I've been exposed to COVID, but also like the health of the community, it's all tied to each other. So yeah, I'm really looking at, not only do I need it for myself, but as a responsible human being and steward of space, I have a responsibility as a mother, as like, you know, a friend, as a sister, as a daughter, to model what it is that I need so that I can give others permission to do that for themselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right. And like, what's in the culture? Yeah, go ahead, Mia.
our collective liberation and ability to restore is not just about like specific individual people. Like it will benefit everyone if we all took a moment to pause and lay down our arms
Ashe.
to move forward. But it's this like insistence on needing to like keep on going without understanding like where we've been and where we're going. And it's just like reacting to whatever is happening in that singular moment. We're not able to move forward in the ways that we wish.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
I mean, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So, like, what's in the culture? So, if the culture is like, no, productivity is the only way to do this, then the strategy, rest becomes a strategy. You know what I mean? It becomes something that's going to be eaten by the culture of work. So, I do wonder, you know, in this moment of reconnecting with that true north of our personal compass, to name what's in the culture. Like what are we learning about the country through these exit polls, and like what are we seeing? Nia, you mentioned earlier before we even went live, this idea of there's millions of people, even though, you know, Biden may have won the election at this point, you know, that there's still this idea of there are people who voted for Trump. There are people who still exist who believe in these tenets, and we have to be willing to face that. We can't just go, oh, okay, well, now it's solved. The issue's solved. You know, as artists, we're going to have to help heal all this trauma. We have to help bring this forward. Yeah. Go ahead, Sade.
I was going to say something that you were saying about culture eats strategy for breakfast, and if strategy is rest, right? Like there's something about what you just said. It's like the strategy has to be decolonized, right? Like the strategy only works if it comes from a space of decolonization, and if the way that we are kind of calibrating is around the weight and the value of our labor. Even in the way people are talking about this election, they're heralding Black women for, you know, voting 97% for Biden, when we see the increase of white women voting for Trump. You know, some of the strategy and the analytics is divisive, but it all really is working within a matrix of a colonized vocabulary. So of course we can't insert restoration and rest, because it is kryptonite to the way that the country calibrates and the way we are identified as Black and brown bodies, that our value from day one has been our labor. So are we allowed to have value in this paradigm that isn't attached to our labor? Is really something that, like, I think that's why it's so hard to and aspirational to even want to rest.
Yeah.
It's not within the matrix.
It's totally
It really is radical. It really does get at the root of the beast. You know what I mean? Like, at the heart of capitalism is you have no value unless you can produce something. And at the heart of rest is that you are inherently valuable, and you just come to this place of love, and I'll give you some more stuff. You know what I mean? Like, the capitalism is so, no, get that. Only people get that. So you got to earn that. You got to be worth that. And then some people will say, because you were born in that family, you're inherently worth that. You can rest. You can just, you know, own land and ride horses, and that's great. But like everybody else, you need to earn your place here. You know, it's like, well, damn. You know, rest is really antithetical to that.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that just totally robs us of all of our humanity. Like it totally robs us of our value, of the space in which, like, when I think about the labor of what has happened all the way up to, like, when I think about the election and when the president-elect it finally was called, there was this jubilation in the streets, but the silence is where I got fatigued and really kind of concerned, because in this moment, silence felt like violence. Silence didn't feel like the same kind of silence that happened in other elections. This silence felt very much intentional. This silence felt very much active, and that planning and plotting was in the works throughout this silence. And it made me concerned as to, like, I could even say, like, even when I was out, I was like, I'm gonna go out in the streets and try to celebrate just a little bit. And it was interesting because as I was out in the streets, if any kind of loud sound happened, any kind of violent sound happened, everyone got quiet because they were on pins and needles waiting for an attack. And it's just like, you're not really then, is this really celebration? Is this really joy? Is this really just a mirage of a feeling right now? Because we actually we're not actually dealing with the realities of what's truly happening in our communities and in our world.
I really feel that. That's the night, that it was called. There was a lot of like cars honking and like celebrating, and people are like standing out of the cars and waving their hands, and something about vehicles driving really fast around a lot of people. I was like, I don't like it. And then all the American flags. The American flags were interesting because people were wrapped in them. People were like running with them. And there was just so much imagery I absorbed over the last 9 months featuring folks with American flags that did not inspire joy and happiness in me. So to see the American flags in a context of celebration, I thank you, Jonathan, for articulating this, because I was like, why am I not enjoying this? Like, why am I like, I'm enjoying it, but I'm also like, whoa.
And then I had a whole American flag. No, and then a whole conversation be like, can I not celebrate? Am I having is this a larger conversation around me not being able to celebrate? And do I need to have that conversation as well? Like it's really divisive kind of how this beast shows up. This beast of fatigue actually shows up, and this beast of labor. Because I think, Sade, you said one of these really beautiful quotes at the beginning of this whole pandemic was like, what if my existence is not attached to my labor? Like, what if for this moment, my existence is not attached to my labor? And I just think that more and more we are being reminded that your existence has to be attached to some form of labor for you to be a viable source for investment, for thrivability, for any like your idea of resting in this moment triggers a latency in your value. And I think that COVID amplifies that. When we think about like how our digital schedules are more advanced than our non, like when we
can be more places.
Yeah.
Do more work.
I think that what you both are bringing up, and this is what I was saying kind of before, is that like we don't feel safe.
Yes.
We don't feel safe. And when a human body is exposed to the uncertainty around their survival, second by second, minute by minute, for an extended period of time, you are literally like an alley cat or something.
Yeah.
And someone extends a hand of kindness and you don't trust it. You're hungry for the celebration, but you don't trust it. And that vibration of not feeling safe in your body connected to a long ancestral line of not being safe in this country. And if we're just constantly looking at it on the surface, we're doing ourselves an injustice, because the rest has to go back 7 generations. Like, from this week's labor, you're resting from those years of labor. And that the magnification of the lack of safety is hitting you on all levels because it is, to Jonathan's point in the beginning, it's COVID. I'm literally unsafe to go outside and not wear a mask. Then all of the murders that are watching on repeat, the trauma porn, I am reminded that I am not safe in this country, in these streets, being policed. And then when you look at the tyranny of Agent Orange in the White House, of what we've endured for 4 years, where it's been open season to treat and to speak about our lives any which way, of course you don't feel safe. And of course you don't trust it. And so, and then people talk about healing. And I think the challenge with having conversations about self-care and healing and is that it's not attached to our activism. So that's what I love about what you say, Chelsea, all the time. It's like, it's not rest for rest's sake. It's not pleasure for pleasure's sake. Like, these are our tools for survival, right? These are our safety routes. Like, we need to literally, like, I love this idea of the double entendre of safety routes, like our safety routes. And like, what are our routes to safety? We have to look at that, and they need to be as complex and dynamic as the human beings we are. And when we look at and we have conversations about healing and about restoration, we need to be, and this is like what your therapist will always say, like, what is the little girl inside of you? Like, what does she want to? That's what you got to heal. And you have to heal your mother's 7-year-old and your grandmother's 7-year-old. All of this, the shift is hitting the fan. All of this, like, if we are standing on the shoulders of our ancestors and we are their wildest dreams, aren't we also an amalgamation of their terror? Like, aren't we an amalgamation of their pain? And so we can't use the ancestral card just from the point of like the crown on our head. We need to also be tapped in to the devastation and the darkness, because we have a responsibility in our own rest and restoration to be conscious of the depth by which we have to heal and rest. And that conversation needs to be at the forefront. If we're not talking about truth, if we're not talking about reconciliation, and it ain't about what happened over the summer, it is about the blood in the soil that bears these strange fruit. And that's what it is. And I'm only interested, and this is why I don't go into the streets to celebrate. I'm only interested in that level of healing, of celebration, of rest, and of joy. Mm-hmm. You know, like, if the joy isn't connected to my activism, it ain't really joy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Can't be
a place to feel.
Go ahead.
Distracted. The self-care that's like rooted in capitalism. It's like buy this and feel better. It's actually like an investment I need to make in my own value. That's like, I am valuable enough to be able to pause and not have to like wait until I accrue enough rest points in order to like take as the like resident 20-year-old of this conversation. I also just need to bring in like a meme that might help our audience members understand the kind of the lack of safety that we feel and the lack of trust.
Go do it.
Spider-Man meme, where it's like all of them are pointing at each other, and it's like, is this my seasonal depression? My COVID depression? Is this my ancestral depression? And we're all just like pointing at each other, and it's like, it's all one pot. There's so many, like you said, Shaka, like all these angles of like unsafety and like barriers to be able to like trust and to love that are getting on our way. And we need to like address each of the Spider-Mans in the circle. That is my contribution. I will be dropping a meme in the comments later tonight.
I love it.
But it's so right.
No, that's so real. It is so real when you think about like this imagery that was blessed onto me when I was at ETW at NYU, which was that like I'm at the apex of, like, you know, we say when we walk in, we're 1,000 ancestors deep. But what if I'm at the apex of those 1,000 ancestors? And that their breath, my breath is a continuation of their breath. My actions are a continuation of their actions. So then my trauma is a continuation of potentially their trauma. that this isn't not a new trauma that's coming into me. My inability to understand my value beyond my ability to create product is not just because I wasn't born with that value proposition on me. I was a learned behavior that got activated because of how I absorbed the world, but also how I got tapped in and tuned into myself. And so like this idea of the Spider-Man, this idea of these spiders that I have to, like these tentacles I have to actually navigate on a consistent basis, and how I have to actually juggle the webs that they actually generate. Because they're not just like what I love about the idea of the spider is not just like the arms that it created, it's all that it has, it's the spindling that it does. Because a lot of us are spindled inside of that trauma. A lot of us are spindled inside of that navigation tool, that understanding of self. A lot of us are spindled inside of it. And it's not until we release that spindle, it's not until we release ourselves from that cocoon, that very, and so interesting that when you think about the spider, and I know we talked about in previous conversations, this idea of being a cocoon during COVID and like, what do you come out of? Well, a spider also cocoons its prey before it eats it, to store it. Right? Mm. In what ways are we cocooning our trauma? In what ways are we cocooning the things that we are trying to consume that are not necessarily of our healing, not necessarily of, and this is like a really interesting download because it's not all gumbo like other, like it's a very interesting download because it's getting to a very beautiful real place called, like, sometimes it's just dark. Yeah. Like light behind me is just like, well, because it's so dark, I get to know what light looks like. And I think that's sometimes we have to really, really be real with, is that like the darkness that we are sometimes so afraid of, the darkness that we sometimes don't lean into with curiosity, is actually the definition of us of being able to understand what humanity actually can and will, and possibly you are responsible for actually leading us into. That you, knowing darkness, can then have a relationship with something that is profound called light. That then you can have a conversation with defining what light can do and where light can show itself. There's just this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful opportunity when I think about this conversation and how real it is today. I'm just like, this is a real one for us that really be going in on. But it's actually the one that's necessary, because I sit here and I'm talking to Sade this morning. I was talking to Sade this morning. What life is this? Mm-hmm. What life has this been crafted for, and who? Mm-hmm. And when we think about the life that's been crafted and for, and who is supposed to maintain this? Who is tilling the ground that is going to make sure? Because we also talked about the Ancestral Platinum Plan, because we also were thinking about, we're ancestors. At the speed of each of our breath, we are articulating ourselves as ancestors and becoming. So what plan are we actually putting forth to actually create not the space for the legacy of that trauma to continue, but create the mechanism for that to end with us, to begin something new? What platinum plan are we, each and every one of us, doing?
How are we being good ancestors, right? Because we look back and we say we're our ancestors' wildest dream. So what is the manifestation of our dream as good ancestors for the generations to come? And I think that, we have a responsibility. The other thing that like strikes me in the realness of this conversation is that in this time that we're living in, it's so easy. It's so easy to point your finger at all the things that are wrong, right, around our oppression in the pursuit of our liberation. But what's the saying? Like, if you have one finger pointing out, there's three pointing back at you.
Yeah.
Like, Black folks, like, are we, I know I say it all the time, but are we willing to be well? That the dismantling of systemic racism and oppression is a contract with ourselves and what we're willing to deal with within our own community, right? Like, it's one thing to say, like, they did this, they called me that, they killed this innocent person. It's another thing to look at the depth of how the trauma has ravaged ourselves and our relationship with each other. And, all things being equal, if racism got erased from the face of the earth, we would still be sick because we have not faced, we need like communal therapy. We have not faced the depths of the tyranny that we have engendered throughout the generations, that the way we love on each other, the way that we love ourselves, love on each other, express love. Like Jonathan often talks about intimacy and the softness of who we are. When do we get to express that? It's hard to rest if a part of your identity, there is no space for softness and intimacy, because what are you resting into, right? You can't. So I find that to be like, I want Black people and our liberation to be steeped in an unabiding, relentless, revolutionary love for ourselves. And until that can happen, and until we can recognize that everything else feels like it's reactionary, feels like it is incremental change, but it's not sustainable change. And what I want for us in this ancestral platinum plan is I want relentless and revolutionary love for ourselves. And when people use the language of self-care and healing, that is what it's rooted into. You were going to say, Chelsea?
Yeah, something I want to put in the Ancestral Platinum Plan is a field of land to feel. I just want to be enraged and be in terror and be in joy and be in celebration. And like Dane mentioned during the Unbought and Unbossed conversation, to be in ritual, you know what I mean? And to allow for who we are authentically and in our entire dynamic to be welcome, to have a place to be, but really to feel, Michelle Shea, an acting teacher of mine, used to say, a place to cry those stuck tears, those tears that have been stuck inside for generations, as we talked about. We've got to break that.
Yeah.
What are y'all putting in your Ancestor Platinum Plan to round out this conversation?
I will say what I'm gonna put. I love the idea of a land to feel. That sounds so restorative.
A field to feel. Is that what you said?
Oh, well, I love it all. I will say what I'll put in my Ancestor Platinum Plan is continual, unapologetic, and still well-resourced rest. Like unapologetic rest, where I don't feel ashamed for that rest. There's no North Star saying, why aren't you doing something different? It's just like rest. And I'm valued for that rest and for the amount of rest I actually provide for myself.
Leah, what's in your plan?
There's so many dreams in my plan, like actual dreams, and I want them to be actualized. They're not just like lofty clouds that like drift away and like you don't return to them again. It's like, no, you receive a dream, you download it because you know your subconscious and your ancestors are trying to tell you something. Then you wake up the next day and you're like, how can I make this come true? So that's the plan.
Love it. Love it.
And you, Sade?
I want unflinching truth.
Ashe.
I want unlimited patience. And direct action when it comes to reconciliation. And I want a shit ton of accountability by all folks on all sides, to be accountable to our actions, to be accountable to our emotions. I just, and you know, this field of feels, I want all of it to be steeped in an unabiding love for who we are as a people.
Ashe.
Yeah. That's
That
it.
feels, that that actually made me feel a little energized. I want all that. Can I get that gumbo to go? Come on now. Can I get that gumbo to go?
And I think that the power of this, I will just say very quickly, the power of this platinum plan, and I hope everybody who's listening goes home and writes what their platinum plan is it's a roadmap, right? It can be our underground railroad. It could be our North Star. We need maps and blueprints by which we build and not just dismantle.
So I think without further ado, I think that's what we're going to leave y'all with. What is your platinum plan? We have named some things to help spark your idea. We have had a conversation around a lot of spectrums around fatigue, but through the platinum plan, maybe we can address it. Maybe we can have rest be a part of, maybe we can allow rest to be a part of our antidote to fatigue, but also a roadmap by us naming how we are going to be great ancestors to ourselves, but also to the future generations. There's just so many things. And so without further ado, we're just going to kind of close out this lovely download for November. We only have one more left. We'll be in December, the second December of February. So thank you for joining us. What?
No, you said the 2nd of February.
Oh, the second Thursday. Sorry, the second Thursday. The second Thursday of December. See, that's fatigue talking. But we're really, really happy and excited to continue doing the download. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, as Nia has put down into the lower third. That is our lovely handle. Hit us up. Let us know how you're feeling. Let us know if there are actually topics that you want to talk about, that you would love this triad to actually, this forad to actually bring up, express, explore, look at. And also, let's talk about making contributions. National Black Theater is a non-profit organization. We only are able to do this kind of programming, and we're only able to continue the kind of work that we're doing by the ability of you out there in this world donating to this institution. So if you give $1, $2, $87 million, they all help. Every ounce helps us to dream, imagine, and root ourselves in our autonomy deeper, brighter, and more abundantly. And so without further ado, we're just going to take a breath together to round out our evening. Thinking about fatigue, thinking about love, breath is the way to combat it all. Thinking about fatigue, thinking about love, breath is the way to combat it all. So something that we do at MBT is a unifying breath. If someone dubs that, I just want some credit, right? I just want some credit. I don't need money. I just need some credit. But money we good. Nice. So we are gonna take a unifying breath together. Anything that anybody wants to say before we take this breath? No? Okay, good to go. All right, so 2 feet flat on the ground, connecting yourself to Mother Earth, allowing the energy from Mother Earth to travel up through your legs, allowing the energy from the crown, the royal, the abundant you to travel through the crown of your head and land into the center of your glorious system. We're just gonna take a breath together. I'm gonna give you a little bit around the technology that we have been cultivating and stewarding at National Black Theater so that we're all on the same page. Breath is a very important thing. Breath is a thing that allows for this instrument, this vessel, this machine, this sacred gift to operate. It woke you up this morning. So with that, we're gonna take a unifying breath. You know, the space and time which we're able to occupy with each other will never happen again. This divine, sacred time is to be honored with a unifying breath. And we breathe in. As we breathe in joy, possibility, empowerment, our own acknowledgement of the roots of our plan to root and bake itself into our system, our ancestral platinum plan. And then when we exhale, we actually exhale it as a gift. So that it wraps around everyone that we meet and in the rooms that we are, so that we can walk inside of that plan, inside of that joy, inside of that love, with the light that we are steward and that we are divinely given to hold. So the count of 3, inhale in, exhale out, and thank you so much for joining us for another episode of The Download. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, inhale in. Then exhale. Ashe.
Hey, thanks. Love y'all.
Love, love, love.
Mwah, mwah,
Ah.
mwah.